Everyone says a woman with a ruined reputation can never truly belong. But at Love and Scars Stories, we know that sometimes the deepest scars are proof of survival, not shame. Today is the story of Lauren Vale, where a whispered scandal became unbreakable strength. Out on the wide Texas frontier, everything began with one woman accepting the job no one else wanted. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. In the dust-blown town of Cedar Falls, Texas, a single notice clung stubbornly to the general store's bulletin board long after every other paper had been torn down. Housekeeper and cook wanted at Blackbriar Ranch. Fair wages. No questions asked. The edges of the page had yellowed and curled with time, ignored by everyone who passed it. Folks from 3 counties knew better than to answer that call. From a distance, Cade Roran's land looked almost unreal. Wide green pastures rolling toward violet hills, strong horses moving through morning fog like shadows. Up close, the place felt hollow, like ground where something had died and never been mourned properly. The owner hadn't been seen smiling in years, not since his wife died giving birth and his little boy was taken by fever before he could learn his letters. Then came Lauren Vale, her hands rough, her past heavier than her bag, with nothing left to protect except her own spine. She had been driven out of 2 towns already, chased by whispers that never dared speak their lies out loud. When she knocked on Cade Roran's door that September mornings, she didn't shrink from the silence inside or the weight of his gaze. 2 broken lives were about to cross paths, neither of them knowing yet what it would cost or what it might heal. Morning light stretched long shadows across Cedar Falls as Lauren Vale stepped down from the merchant's wagon. Her leather satchel held all she owned: 2 plain dresses, a faded photograph of her parents, and $3 worn thin from use. September carried the smell of cattle and mesquite on the air, a scent that tugged at memories of a farm she'd lost years before. Cedar Falls was a tired place. Weather-beaten storefronts lined the street, paint blistered and peeling beneath the Texas sun. The general store, the saloon, the blacksmith shop, everything a frontier town needed, though none of it looked hopeful anymore. Still, it was the sort of town where a woman with a damaged name might disappear into honest work if she kept her head down. Lauren touched the small cameo pinned at her collar, her mother's final gift before illness took her. It didn't belong with her coarse cotton dress, but it reminded her she had once been someone else. She had been raised gently once, taught music and needlework in a proper home. That version of herself felt like a stranger now. "You certain about this, miss?" the merchant asked, concern creasing his brow. "Blackbriar Ranch isn't fit for a woman alone. That Cade Roran, he's known for trouble." Lauren straightened her back. "I know the stories, but I need work and he needs help. Seems even enough to me." The merchant shook his head, but said nothing more. He'd seen that look before, the look of someone who'd run out of other doors. As the wagon rolled off, Lauren remained standing in the street, dust settling around her boots. Her eyes found the bulletin board, as if pulled there. The notice was exactly as described. Faded, spotted, still legible. Housekeeper and cook wanted at Blackbriar Ranch. Fair wages, no questions asked. Inquire with Cade Roran. "You aiming to take that job?" Lauren turned to see an elderly woman studying her closely. She was small, neat, silver hair pulled tight into a bun, her eyes sharp but kind. "I'm Bess Calderon," the woman said, offering her hand. "I run the seamstress shop, and you'd be the woman asking after the Roran place when the merchant passed through Millville." Lauren accepted the handshake, surprised by its strength. "Word moves quick out here," Bess Calderon said, her voice calm but knowing. "Quicker than a grass fire with the wind behind it. Folks are already saying you're either fearless or plain foolish." "I haven't settled on which," Lauren Vale answered, a faint smile touching her mouth. "Might be a little of both. My name's Lauren Vale, and I've come to take that job, if Cade Roran is willing to hire me." Bess's expression sobered. "Then you know what happened out there, don't you? Cade Roran wasn't always the man he is now. Before the war, before he lost his family, he was different. Grief can bend a person until there's nothing straight left in them. He's not the same man who rode off 10 years ago," Bess continued. "I know about his wife and his boy," Lauren said quietly. "I know folks say he's hard on anyone who works for him. I've handled hard men before." "This isn't about being hard," Bess replied gently. "It's about a man who stopped living altogether. That ranch is beautiful, but it's like a burial ground. He drifts through that house like a spirit, speaks to no one, eats barely enough to stand. Garrick Moss is the only hand who stayed on," she went on. "Cade talks more to his horses than he does to people." Lauren felt an ache she hadn't expected. She knew the weight of loss, the way grief could make the world feel like it had turned its back on you. Maybe that was exactly why someone needed to stand their ground there. Bess studied her closely. "You've got your own history, don't you? Takes a certain kind of woman to go after a job everyone else avoids." "Don't we all carry something?" Lauren said evenly. "But I'm not here to trade sad stories. I'm here to work." Bess nodded once. "Then you'll need supplies. Come inside. I've got a few things that might help." The seamstress shop was warm and cluttered, filled with folded fabric, jars of buttons, and the quiet comfort of things made by hand. Bess moved briskly, packing a carpet bag as she spoke. "Clean aprons," she said, smoothing the cloth. "Even hard work deserves a bit of dignity." She added a small sewing kit. "You'll be mending more than you expect. Big houses fall apart when no one's tending them." "I can't afford all this," Lauren protested. "You don't need to," Bess replied. "Call it an investment. If you last out there, I'll have someone to talk to when you come into town. Running a shop alone gets quiet." The kindness caught Lauren off guard. Tears burned her eyes. Simple decency had been rare for too long. "Thank you," she said softly. "Don't thank me yet," Bess replied. "Thank me if you're still standing come Christmas." She pressed the bag into Lauren's hands, along with a wrapped parcel. Fresh bread, preserves. A man's got to eat, even if he's forgotten why. The walk to Blackbriar Ranch took nearly an hour. Lauren followed a dirt road that cut through rolling grasslands and scattered oak. The land was unforgiving, yet striking, gold and amber beneath the afternoon sun. She understood why someone would choose this place to build a life far from town troubles. When she reached the rise, the ranch came into view like something imagined. The main house rose from stone and dark timber, its wide porch wrapping 3 sides. Corrals and outbuildings lay spread across the land, cattle moving quietly in distant pastures. It had everything a prosperous ranch should have, except sound. No laughter, no voices, just silence, waiting. No children's voices carried across the yard. No dresses fluttered on a clothesline. Not a single sound of laughter or conversation drifted from the house. The ranch was orderly, prosperous, and striking. And yet it felt hollow, as if life had moved on and forgotten it behind. An older man stepped out of the barn as Lauren drew closer. leading a horse by the reins. His frame was bent from years of labor, his stance wide and steady, his eyes cautious but kind. This had to be Garrick Moss, the lone hand who'd never left. "You must be the woman from town," he said, his tone gentle. "I am. I've come about the position," Lorne replied. "Is Cade Roran available?" Garrick glanced toward the house, then back at her. "He's inside. But, miss, if you'll pardon me saying so, you might want to turn back while you can. He hasn't been the same since he lost his family," Lorne finished softly. "I know, but I still have to try." Garrick nodded, slow and solemn. "Then I reckon you're a good sort. I'll say a prayer for the both of you." The front door was heavy oak, painted black and fitted with brass that once must have gleamed. Now it was dulled by time, like everything else on the property. Lorne lifted the knocker and struck it 3 times. Footsteps answered from within. Slow, measured, unwilling. When the door opened, Cade Roran stood before her. He was taller than she expected, broad across the shoulders, his dark hair streaked with gray at the temples. His eyes were the color of a gathering storm. Whatever handsomeness he'd once possessed had been worn down by grief, etched deep into his face. His clothes were clean but carelessly worn, his beard trimmed yet shot through with silver. He looked like a man who no longer bothered much with himself. "Mr. Roran," Lorne said evenly, "my name is Lorne Vale. I've come about the work." He studied her in silence, weighing her without a word. "You understand what the position requires? Cooking, housekeeping, I can manage both. And you know what happened to the last 3 women who took it?" "They left," Lorne replied. "I won't." Something shifted in his gaze. Surprise, perhaps, or doubt. "You sound certain for someone who hasn't stepped foot inside yet." "I'm certain I need the job," she said. "And you need the help. The rest we can settle as we go." After a moment, he moved aside and let her pass. The house beyond was impressive. High ceilings, polished floors, fine furniture that spoke of money and refinement. Yet it felt untouched, as though no one truly lived there. Dust floated through beams of afternoon light pouring in from tall windows. The quiet pressed in on her, thick and heavy. "The kitchen's that way," Cade said, nodding toward a doorway. "Your room's upstairs. Second door on the left. $30 a month, meals included. You're free to leave whenever you choose." "And you're free to send me off whenever you choose," Lorne added. "I understand." For the briefest moment, his mouth nearly curved into a smile. "Nearly." "That seems fair," he said. "Want to see the kitchen?" The kitchen was well appointed, an iron stove large enough to feed a small army, a pump that drew water straight to the sink, shelves lined with pots and pans fit for a hotel. And yet, like the rest of the house, it felt unused. Waiting. The counters were wiped clean but showed no sign of use. Cupboards were filled, yet nothing bore the marks of recent meals. Lorne studied the kitchen a moment before speaking. "When was the last time you sat down to a real meal?" she asked, noticing how little cooking had been done. "I get by," Cade Roran replied. "That's not what I asked." He turned toward her, and for the first time, she caught something in his eyes besides distance. "Are you always this plain-spoken?" "When it matters," Lorne said. "Yes. If I'm meant to run this house and cook your meals, I need to know what I'm dealing with." He was silent so long she nearly gave up waiting. At last he spoke, I eat when I'm hungry, sleep when I'm worn out, work when there's work. That's all I require. But is that living? The words settled heavy between them. Cade's jaw tightened, his hands curling at his sides. For a moment, Lorne thought she'd gone too far, that he'd tell her to leave then and there. Instead, he said quietly, "I'll show you your room. You can begin in the morning." As she followed him up the narrow staircase, Lorne brushed her fingers against the cameo at her throat. Whatever came next, she was committed now. She had chosen her ground, and she intended to stand on it. Her room was modest but orderly. A narrow bed, a washstand, and a single window overlooking the ranch. It was more than she'd known in months, and it felt like mercy. When Cade's footsteps faded down the hall, she sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself a breath of hope. Tomorrow, she would start the work of waking this house. She would fill the silence with the sounds of cooking, open rooms long closed to air and light, and, if fortune allowed, help a wounded man remember what it meant to feel alive. Outside, the Texas sky burned pink and gold as the sun slipped behind the hills. Lorne Vale had finally found a place to stand, and she meant to make it matter. She rose before dawn, her first morning at Blackbriar Ranch, as habit dictated. The room lay dark, but the land was already stirring. Horses shifted and snorted in the corrals, and Garrick Moss's boots thudded softly on the porch as he began his rounds. Lorne dressed quickly in a plain work dress and headed downstairs. In the early light, the house felt different. Less like a tomb, more like a place that had simply forgotten how to breathe. She lit the stove, set coffee to boil, and opened the pantry to take stock. The shelves were better stocked than she'd expected. Flour, sugar, dried beans, preserved fruit, salt pork. Someone had been keeping the house supplied, even if no one bothered to use it. She could make a proper breakfast, the kind meant to fill a working man and remind him food was more than fuel. She was kneading biscuit dough when footsteps sounded on the stairs. Cade Rawron appeared in the doorway, dressed for the day despite the hour. His hair was still damp, his face freshly shaved. Those small acts made him look more real, less like the hollow figure who'd opened the door the day before. "Morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning, Mr. Rawron. Coffee's ready. Breakfast won't be long." He poured himself a cup and stood by the window, watching the sunrise spread color across the land. "You don't have to cook for me. I've done without before." "Doing without isn't the same as eating well," Lorne said, sliding the biscuits into the oven. "A man working this ranch needs more than scraps." "I've managed fine on my own," he replied. "Have you?" Lorne turned to face him, taking in the way his shirt hung loose on his shoulders, the shadows carved beneath his eyes. "When was the last time you ate 3 proper meals in a single day?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Lorne cracked the eggs carefully, adding a splash of cream she'd found in the cold cellar. She cooked the bacon slow and steady until it was crisp without being scorched. When she set the plate in front of Cade Rawron, she noticed his hands hesitate above the fork. "It's been a long while since anyone cooked for me," he said quietly. "Then it's long past time," Lorne replied. They ate without speaking. Only the scrape of cutlery and the morning birds outside filled the space. When Cade finished, he looked almost startled, as if he'd forgotten the feeling of being full instead of merely sustained. "Thank you," he said. There was something new in his voice, subtle, a trace of warmth, quickly hidden, but unmistakably there. After he went out to tend the ranch, Lorne began the work she'd truly come for. The house was vast, 8 rooms below, 6 above, and though it had been kept orderly, it felt sealed shut, as if whole sections had been abandoned by time itself. She started downstairs, throwing open windows to invite air and daylight inside. Dust lifted as she wiped down furniture, revealing fine wood dulled by neglect. In the parlor, she found the first quiet proof of the family Kate had lost. A small rocking chair sat in the corner, built for a child. Nearby, a basket that once held toys now gathered dust. On the mantel, clean outlines marked where photographs had once stood. Upstairs was where the silence grew heavier. Cade's room lay at the end of the hall, bare, orderly, rigidly controlled. But it was the door beside it that made Lauren's breath catch. It was shut, though not locked. When she turned the handle and stepped inside, she knew instantly what the room had been. A nursery. A crib rested against the wall, the linen still neatly tucked. A changing table stood nearby. A dresser painted with bright animals. Shelves lined with picture books. And on the windowsill sat a small wooden horse, carved with care beyond measure. Lauren lifted the toy, her fingers tracing the smooth grain. The craftsmanship was remarkable. The curve of the neck, the flowing mane, the delicate legs shaped with patience and love. Someone had spent hours on it. No, more than hours. This was a father's work, Cade's work, a gift meant for his son. "What are you doing in here?" The voice came sharp and close behind her. Lauren turned to see Cade Roran standing in the doorway, his face drawn tight with fury and pain. She hadn't heard him climb the stairs. "I'm cleaning," she said evenly, though her pulse thundered. "Opening the house, letting in light. This room stays closed." His voice was controlled to the point of breaking. "It doesn't need cleaning. It doesn't need anything." "Mr. Roran, put that down." His eyes were fixed on the wooden horse in her hands, as if it burned. "Put it down and leave." Lauren set the toy back on the sill with care, but she didn't step away. "This was your son's room. Don't." The word came out raw. "Don't speak about him." "What was his name?" His hands clenched at his sides. "I said don't." "He was real," Lauren said softly. "He lived here. He played with his horse you made for him. Pretending he never existed won't bring him back." She met his gaze without flinching. "But it won't honor him either. You don't know what you're talking about." His voice had lost its restraint now, rough and stripped bare. "You don't know what it means to lose everything that matters, don't I?" Lauren answered, her tone calm but unyielding. "Do you think I came here from comfort, from a life untouched by loss? Do you think I haven't buried people I loved?" He stared at her, and something shifted. For the first time, he truly saw her, not as an intruder breaking the stillness he'd built around himself, but as someone who carried her own scars. His name was Ash. Cade Roran said at last. The words seemed torn from deep inside him. Ash Roran. He would have turned 5 last month. "And your wife?" Lauren asked quietly. "Merelda." The name barely carried sound. "She died bringing him into the world, bled out while I held her hand and swore she'd be all right." A harsh, broken laugh escaped him. "We had 3 years. 3 years of watching him grow, teaching him to walk, hearing him laugh. Then the fever took him, and there wasn't a thing I could do, not a damn thing." Tears burned Lauren's eyes. "I'm sorry. Truly. Everyone is," he snapped. "Sorry doesn't bring them back. It doesn't quiet the house or warm the bed or give you a reason to wake up." No, she said, it doesn't. But shutting yourself away from their memory won't heal it either. His anger flared again. So what would you have me do? Sit in here and bleed over what I lost? I'd have you remember that you loved them, and they loved you, Lauren said. I'd have you honor that love instead of burying it with them. You've been here one day, he said coldly. One day, and you think you understand grief? I think you've been grieving for 4 years, she replied. And it's been devouring you. She moved toward him carefully, as one would approach a wounded creature. You're so afraid of releasing the pain that you've forgotten how to live. Maybe I don't want to live without them. The words fell heavy between them, raw and devastating in their truth. Lauren reached out and rested her hand lightly on his arm. They wouldn't want that, she said gently. Not Merelda, not Ash. They wouldn't want you to disappear just because they had to. Cade's face twisted, the struggle plain to see. For a moment, she thought he might collapse under it. Instead, he pulled back, gathering himself with effort. Clean the rest of the house if you wish, he said, his voice once again locked tight. But this room stays closed. That isn't a suggestion. He left her standing alone in the nursery, surrounded by quiet proof of love and loss. Lauren looked around once more, committing everything to memory. The tiny clothes folded neatly away, the books never opened. The wooden horse waiting patiently on the windowsill for a child who would never return. Now she understood the man Cade had become. He wasn't cruel, he was shattered. And broken things, she knew this well, could sometimes be repaired if someone cared enough to try. But first, he had to want to heal. And that, she knew, would be the hardest battle of all. In the days that followed, life at the ranch settled into a careful routine. Cade treated Lauren with courteous distance, accepting her meals and her work without remark. She honored the boundaries he'd drawn, even as she quietly reshaped the house into something warmer, something lived in. It was while searching the kitchen cupboards for baking supplies that she found it, a leather-bound recipe book tucked behind rows of preserving jars, waiting to be discovered. The pages were yellowed and soft at the edges, marked by years of handling and faint stains from spilled flour and grease. The handwriting was careful, steady. On the first page, an inscription read, Merelda Roran's Kitchen. With love from Mother, 1859. Lauren traced the familiar recipes with her fingertips. Cornbread, apple pie, pot roast with root vegetables. These were the meals that once filled the house with warmth. The kind of cooking that turned a building into a home. She could almost see Merelda standing at the stove, apron tied tight, checking these very pages while her husband and son waited nearby. That evening, Lauren chose the cornbread recipe, following the notes scribbled in the margins. Add an extra pinch of salt. Ash likes it best with honey butter. When she set the warm, golden squares in front of Cade Roran at supper, his hand froze halfway to his fork. Where did you find that? He asked quietly. In the kitchen, Lauren said. I hope you don't mind. I thought you might want something different from biscuits. He took a bite, then closed his eyes. Grief crossed his face, as if it had struck him bodily. She made this every Sunday after church, he said. Ash would eat 3 pieces if we let him. Lauren stayed silent, giving him space to sit with the memory. After a long moment, he opened his eyes and looked at her with something close to gratitude. It tastes the same, he said. Good recipes are meant to be used, Lauren replied gently. Your wife wouldn't want them forgotten. In the weeks that followed, Lauren eased into the steady rhythm of ranch life. She rose before sunrise to prepare breakfast, spent her mornings cleaning and mending, and wandered the land in the afternoons. The ranch stretched nearly 3,000 acres, rolling grassland broken by hills and a narrow creek winding through its heart. It was on one of those walks that she met the horses. The Blackbriar herd was striking, strong quarter horses with bright eyes and proud posture. They watched her approach with interest instead of skittish fear. When she reached out to the nearest mare, the animal sniffed her hand before allowing the touch. She's taken a liking to you, Garrick Moss said, appearing at her side as quietly as ever. That's Rosie. She's choosy about who she trusts. She's beautiful, Lauren said, stroking the mare's neck. They all are. Cade's got a sharp eye for good stock. These horses are his pride. Garrick adjusted his hat against the afternoon sun. What's left of it, anyhow? He studied her a moment. You mind if I ask what you did before coming here? I helped run my father's farm before he passed, Lauren said. Cattle and horses, mostly. I know my way around livestock. That explains it, Garrick said. Animals can tell when someone knows what they're doing. After a pause, he asked, You planning on staying? I hope to. Garrick nodded slowly. That man needs someone who won't walk away from him. He's been carrying too much alone for too long. It's hardened him. Lauren thought of Cade's face when he tasted Merelda's cornbread. The way his expression had softened, gentle as summer rain. She believed she could make him laugh again. Truly laugh. Not that bitter sound he wore like armor. And Ash, Garrick said quietly. That boy was the light in his father's eyes. Cade Rauran had taught his boy to ride before he could properly keep his balance on 2 feet, lifting him onto a saddle and carrying him across the ranch on his shoulders each evening as the sun went down. Their conversation was broken by noise from the main road. Hooves thundered hard against the earth, dust rising in a thick plume behind a fast-approaching rider. As the horse closed the distance, Lauren Vale could see it was a young man, urgency etched across his face. He pulled his mount up short near the corral. Garrick Moss, he called out. Where's Mr. Rauran? I've got news from town. Cade stepped out of the barn at once, his posture sharpening. What is it, Rafe Colton? It's about the Becker place, sir, Rafe said quickly. Dane Hollis made an offer yesterday. Cash, full asking price. Old man Becker's considering selling. Cade's face hardened instantly. He's not selling. That land borders yours to the south, Rafe said. Yes, sir. And folks are saying Hollis isn't stopping there. He's been asking around. Property values, water rights, everything. Lauren watched Cade's hands curl into fists. Dane Hollis, he said, the name falling like a curse. I knew he'd show up sooner or later. Who is he? Lauren asked. Cade turned to her, his expression dark. Someone from my past. Someone I should have left buried. He looked back at Rafe. Any word if Becker's made up his mind? Not yet, sir. But Hollis is throwing money around town, buying goodwill. People say he's got plans for this whole stretch of land. When Rafe rode off, Cade remained still, staring toward the southern edge of his property, his jaw set tight. Lauren approached him carefully. This Hollis, she said. He's serious trouble. The worst kind. Cade replied without looking at her. We served together in the war. I once saved his life. He exhaled slowly, turned out to be the worst mistake I ever made." After a pause, he added, "Dane doesn't just want land. He wants control of everything and everyone near him." "And if he gets a foothold here?" Lauren asked. Cade's smile was cold, without humor. "Then I'll fight him, same as I should have years ago." That evening, as Lauren prepared supper, beef stew with dumplings, taken from one of Merelda Rouran's recipes, her thoughts lingered on what Garrick Moss had shared about Cade's life before loss hollowed it out. It was difficult to reconcile the quiet, grim man she knew now with the father who once laughed freely and carried his son across the land. When she served the stew, she noticed Cade barely touched it. His thoughts were clearly elsewhere, fixed on the threat Dane Hollis represented. "This one was Ash's favorite," Lauren said softly, breaking the silence. Cade looked up, startled. "She wrote it in the book," Lauren continued. "Little notes, what you liked, what made meals special. She wanted her cooking to keep your family fed and cared for. She never thought she wouldn't be here to cook them herself," Cade said, his voice heavy with old sorrow. "Maybe not," Lauren replied, "but she made sure you'd have a piece of her love in every meal, even if she couldn't be here to serve it." Cade stared into his bowl for a long while. Then he said quietly, "Hollis won't stop with the Becker place. Once he settles in, he'll come for everything else. This ranch included." "Then we make sure he never settles in," Lauren said simply. Cade stared at her, clearly taken aback. "We?" "Yes, we," Lauren Vale said, holding his gaze without flinching. "I have a stake in this place now. This ranch is my home too, Mr. Rouran, and I won't stand by while anyone tries to take it without a fight." For the first time since her arrival, Cade's mouth twitched with something close to a smile. "You may be more trouble than I planned on, Miss Vale." "I certainly hope so," she replied. This time, he smiled for real. Small, unguarded, like the first pale light of dawn after a long, unforgiving night. The following Sunday, Lauren found Cade in the workshop behind the barn. She'd been searching for him to ask about supplies for preserving the last of the apples when the steady rhythm of wood being shaped drew her in. Through the open doorway, she saw him hunched over a workbench, hands moving with quiet confidence over a slab of oak. The workshop itself surprised her. Shelves lined with tools, clean, organized, well used. Half-finished projects rested beneath cloth covers, and in one corner stood finished pieces that stole her breath. Carved picture frames detailed with fine patterns. A jewelry box inlaid with contrasting woods. A rocking chair that wouldn't have been out of place in the finest parlor west of the Mississippi. Cade looked up as she stepped closer, his hands freezing mid-motion. "I was just..." He stopped, unable or unwilling to finish the thought. "This is remarkable," Lauren said, brushing her fingers along the arm of the rocking chair. "You made all of this?" He nodded, guarded. "Keeps my hands busy. Gives me something to do." But she could see the truth. In the precision of every line, the patience etched into each curve. She recognized a man trying to build something lasting in a world that had taken too much from him. On the workbench lay his current project. A small wooden cross, sanded smooth and polished until the grain glowed warmly. The balance was perfect, delicate yet strong. "This is for their graves," Lauren said quietly. It wasn't a question. Cade's grip tightened around his tools. The ones the church put up were plain, bought off a shelf. They deserved better. "They did," she agreed. "This is beautiful. They'd be honored." He looked at her as if he'd expected pity or worse. "You don't think it's foolish?" making something for people who can't see it. I think love doesn't end with death, Lauren said simply. And creating something beautiful in their memory is one of the truest ways to honor it. They stood together in silence as the late-day sun spilled through the workshop windows, warming the scent of fresh wood and sawdust beneath their boots. I should let you get back to it, Lauren said at last. I only came to ask about supplies for canning the apples. Take whatever you need from the pantry, Cade replied. Then he hesitated. And, Lauren, thank you for understanding. That evening brought visitors neither of them expected. Lauren was clearing the table when the sound of approaching horses drifted through the window. She looked out to see two riders pulling up near the house. A man and a woman, both well-dressed, neither familiar. Cade answered the door, and she heard his sharp intake of breath. Ivy, he said, his tone tightly controlled. I wasn't expecting you. Hello, Cade, the woman replied. Her voice was refined, touched with the polish of eastern cities and proper schools. May we come in? Lauren stepped into the hallway as Cade led them into the parlor. The woman was striking in a delicate, practiced way. Golden hair styled in the latest fashion, her traveling dress clearly worth more than Lauren earned in a year. The man beside her was older, composed, carrying himself like someone accustomed to being obeyed. Lauren, Cade said stiffly, this is Ivy Leach, and her husband, Armand Leach. Ivy, Armand, this is Lauren Vale, my housekeeper, Cade said stiffly. Ivy's gaze moved over Lauren with practiced grace, polite but measuring. How nice to meet you, Miss Vale, she said smoothly. Cade and I were close before the war. The air in the parlor grew heavy, tight enough to weigh on the chest. Cade remained standing apart from his guests, shoulders set like iron. Ivy settled on the edge of the sofa, poised as if she might rise and leave at any moment. We're passing through on our way to San Antonio, Armand offered, clearly attempting to soften the silence. Thought we'd stop by and see how you were doing. I'm doing just fine, Cade replied, curt and final. The ranch looks prosperous, Ivy said, her eyes drifting around the room. You've done very well for yourself. Have I? Cade's smile was sharp, humorless. That depends on what you call success. Lauren excused herself to prepare refreshments, though the voices carried easily into the kitchen. It didn't take long to understand. Ivy Leach had once been more than a friend. Whatever lay between them had been deep, unfinished, and painful. I heard about Marelda and the baby, Ivy said when Lauren returned with coffee. I'm so sorry, Cade. I know how much you wanted a family. Color drained from his face. Did you? He asked quietly. I seem to recall you saying I was too eager to settle down. Wasn't that what you told me when you broke off our engagement? The words landed like a blade. Ivy flushed, her fingers trembling as they curled around her cup. That was different, she murmured. We were young. No, Cade said coldly. You weren't ready for a ranch in the middle of nowhere, or a man who had nothing but grit and dreams. I remember. Armand cleared his throat. Perhaps we should change the subject. Actually, Ivy said, lifting her chin, resolve hardening her features. There is something else. I've heard about Dane Hollis showing interest in this area. Armand has business connections. We might be able to help you if Hollis becomes a problem. Cade's expression turned to stone. I'll handle Hollis myself. You don't understand, Ivy pressed. He's not the man you knew during the war. He's powerful now, ruthless. He destroys anyone who stands in his way. And let him try, Cade replied flatly. Cade, please. Ivy leaned forward, eyes shining. I made a mistake years ago. I chose comfort over love, and I've regretted it every day since. She hesitated, gathering courage. When I heard what you lost, what you endured, I realized Armand and I were never truly happy. We could start again, somewhere new, together. The silence that followed was crushing. Lauren stood frozen, her fingers locked around the coffee pot, her heart hammering painfully in her chest. This woman, refined, elegant, belonging to Cade's former world, was offering him something Lauren could never give. A return to the life he once had. Cade rose slowly. His face was unreadable, carved from restraint and old scars. You need to leave, he said quietly. Cade, now. His voice was final, absolute. You made your decision 8 years ago, Ivy, Cade said evenly. I made mine the day I married Merelda. She's gone, but that doesn't open the door for your regrets. Ivy's composure finally cracked. But you're alone out here, she said, her voice breaking. This isn't living, Cade. This is just surviving. Maybe it is, Cade replied quietly. But it's my life to live, or endure. After the carriage rolled away into the deepening dusk, Cade stood motionless at the window, watching until it vanished beyond the trees. Lauren began clearing the coffee service, her hands trembling despite her effort to steady them. You don't need to clean that now, Cade said without turning. It's all right, Lauren answered softly. I don't mind. She was beautiful, Cade said after a moment, his voice distant, thoughtful. Everything a man is supposed to want. Lauren swallowed hard. Yes, she was. 8 years ago, I thought her leaving would kill me. Cade went on. I thought my life ended before it ever really began. He turned to her then, his gaze steady, searching. Funny how life twists things around. If she'd stayed, I never would have met Merelda. Never would have had Ash, even for the short time I was given. And I wouldn't be here now, Lauren said gently. No, Cade agreed. You wouldn't. And that would be a loss. Because I'm starting to believe this is exactly where I'm meant to be. Their eyes held across the lamplit room. Something unspoken stirred between them. Recognition, maybe even hope, though neither was ready to name it. Outside, the Texas wind moved through the trees, carrying the faint promise of change. October arrived with crisp mornings and honey-gold sunlight that made the ranch glow like a painted dream. Lauren had been at Blackbriar 6 weeks now, and the change was undeniable. The house breathed again, filled with the clink of dishes, the kettle's whistle, and Lauren's quiet humming as she worked. While sorting papers on Cade's desk one afternoon, she found a photograph tucked between ledgers. Cade is a younger man, standing tall beside a woman of gentle beauty, holding a laughing baby. Merelda and Ash, caught in a moment of pure joy. Cade's face in the picture was unlined, open, hopeful. Merelda's expression radiated calm devotion. The child reached toward the camera, mid-laugh, alive with wonder. You found it. Lauren turned to see Cade in the doorway. She hadn't heard him enter. I'm sorry, she said quickly, moving to return it. I wasn't snooping, it just slipped out. It's all right, he said quietly, stepping closer. His eyes never left the image. I'd forgotten it was there. They were beautiful, Lauren said. Yes, Cade replied. They were. He took the photograph gently from her hands. This was right before my last cattle drive. Ash was 18 months old, just learning to walk. He paused, his voice tightening. Merelda was already pregnant again. We didn't know it yet. Lorne's chest tightened. What happened? I was gone 3 months, Cade said. When I came home, she was so sick she could barely stand. The memory settled heavily between them, quiet and unrelenting, as the afternoon light faded across the ranch. We lost the baby at 4 months. Cade's voice was level, almost empty, but the pain showed in the deep lines carved around his eyes. The doctors said her body never truly healed. That's why Ash's birth nearly killed her, why she didn't survive it. You blame yourself, Lorne said quietly. It wasn't a question, and Cade didn't argue. If I hadn't taken that drive, if I'd been here when she fell ill, maybe things would have turned out different. Or maybe they wouldn't have, Lorne replied gently. Sometimes loss just happens, Cade. Sometimes there's no one to blame. No way to rewrite what's already gone. He studied her face in the lamplight. You sound like someone who knows. Lorne hesitated, then chose truth. I loved a man once. His family decided I wasn't good enough for him. They said I wanted his money, said I'd shame their name. Her fingers brushed the cameo at her throat. When the rumors spread, he believed them, threw me away like I was nothing. What kind of rumors? That I'd been carrying on with a married man, that I was loose, ruined. Her jaw tightened. None of it was true. But truth doesn't matter when folks are eager to believe the worst. Cade set the photograph carefully back on the desk and turned fully toward her. That's why you left town? Twice, she said. Each time I thought I could start over. Each time the lies followed me. Stories grow legs when people repeat them. She met his gaze without flinching. I'm not what town gossip says I am. But I'm not the soft girl I was before either. Scandal changes you, hardens you. Good, Cade said firmly. Soft girls don't last long in this world. Women with steel do. Warmth spread through Lorne's chest. Is that what you think I have? Among other things, he said quietly. You stayed when Ivy offered me what she thought was a better life. You didn't push yourself forward. You didn't compete. Because anything else wouldn't have been real, Lorne said. I want to be chosen, Cade. Not taken out of convenience, or because there's no one else. They stood close enough for her to see flecks of gold in his gray eyes, close enough to feel his heat. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he lifted a rough hand and brushed her cheek. You're not convenient, he said softly. You're necessary. There's a difference. Before she could answer, pounding hooves shattered the stillness. Cade stepped back, already moving toward the window. 3 riders, he said grimly, coming hard. They went outside together, Cade's hand instinctively settling near his gun. The riders were familiar, Rafe Colton from town, with 2 men Lorne recognized from the general store. Mr. Roran, Rafe called as he dismounted. You need to know, Dane Hollis bought the Becker place today, paid you cash, closed it this afternoon. Cade's face turned to stone. What else? He's asking about water rights, creek access, who owns what? Rafe hesitated. And sir, he's been asking about you, your finances, your debts, whether you might consider selling. Cade's voice was low and lethal. The hell I would. That's what folks told him. Rafe had said, but he just smiled. Said everyone's got a price, and he's real good at finding it. After the riders departed, Cade remained motionless, staring toward the southern line where the Becker land lay. Evening air cooled fast, and Lorne could see the tension drawn tight through his shoulders. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Whatever it takes," Cade replied evenly. "Dane Hollis thinks he can scare me into selling. He's about to learn otherwise." "Cade." She rested a careful hand on his arm. "What really happened between you two during the war?" He was silent long enough she thought he might refuse. Then he spoke. "We were scouts, cut off during a retreat, deep in enemy country. Hollis took a bullet, couldn't move fast." Cade's hands curled into fists. "I had a choice, leave him and make it out alone, or stay and risk us both. You stayed. I stayed. Carried him near 20 miles through hostile ground, nearly died doing it." His laugh was sharp and bitter. "Should have left him." "You don't mean that." "Don't I?" Cade turned to her, eyes dark. "You don't know Dane Hollis like I do, Lorne. He isn't just ruthless. He's rot. Everything he touches turns bad. And now he's here," she said quietly. "On my land, threatening the last thing I've got." She saw something in his face then, old violence pressing against restraint. It frightened her. "Promise me something," she said. "What?" "Promise me you won't let anger decide for you. Don't do anything reckless." Cade studied her in the fading light. "You're worried about me." "Yes. Why?" The question hung heavy between them. Lorne felt warmth rise in her face, but she held his gaze. "Because you matter to me," she said, "more than I planned." The hardness in his expression softened. Cade lifted his hands and framed her face, thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Lorne," he said, her name like a vow. This time, when he leaned in, she didn't step back. His kiss was gentle, searching, warm and steady. She rose onto her toes, answering him, and felt his breath catch. When they parted, they stayed close, foreheads touching. "I haven't felt this since Merelda," Cade whispered. "I thought that part of me was gone." "I never felt this before at all," Lorne admitted softly. "What I thought was love before. It wasn't this." Cade pulled back just enough to look at her. "I can't promise you an easy life. Hollis is coming, and I'm not an easy man." She smiled faintly. "And I'm a woman with a ruined name who takes the jobs no one else wants." That earned a real laugh from him. Low, surprised, alive. "Seems we fit," he said. "We do," Lorne agreed, then grew serious. "Whatever comes with Dane Hollis, we face it together. But promise me one more thing." "What's that?" "Choose healing over revenge." Cade held her gaze, then nodded once. Cade studied her face, taking in the resolve that had drawn him to her from the start. "I promise," he said at last. "But if he comes after you, that promise won't mean much." "Fair enough," Lorne Vale replied, rising on her toes to kiss him once more. "Let's pray it doesn't come to that." They walked back toward the house with their fingers laced, unaware of the lone figure watching from the ridge above the ranch. Dane Hollis sat his horse in the deepening dusk, his features tight with rage and something close to envy. He had expected to find Cade Ruran ruined and alone, ripe for the taking after years of careful planning. Instead, he'd found a man pulling himself back together, with something worth defending. That would not stand. The first frost arrived early that year, silvering the grass and sending pale breath from the horse's nostrils in the sharp morning air. Lorne woke to find Cade already gone, though a pot of coffee steamed on the stove and a note rested by the sugar bowl. Checking the south pasture, back by noon. See, she smiled at the simple thoughtfulness. In the weeks since their first kiss, they had slipped into an easy rhythm, moving around each other like a long-settled pair. Yet every brush of hands still sparked something new. While hanging laundry, Lorne noticed a rider approaching from the direction of town. He wasn't one of Cade's usual callers. The man sat a fine horse and wore tailored clothes that marked him as someone accustomed to command. As he drew nearer, she saw a striking face framed by silver-threaded hair and eyes that measured everything. "Miss Vale, I presume," he said, dismounting smoothly. "I'm Dane Hollis. I believe you work for Cade Roran." So this was the man Cade feared. Up close, Hollis was imposing, broad, polished, with a smile that felt practiced rather than kind. "Mr. Hollis," Lorne replied evenly. "Cade isn't here just now. It's you I wish to see." Hollis's smile widened. "I've heard quite a bit about you. Folks say you've breathed life back into this place, made Cade almost human again." "I'm just the housekeeper," Lorne said carefully. "Are you?" His gaze swept over her, cool and appraising. "From what I've observed, you're far more than that. Cade Roran doesn't form attachments lightly." A chill crept through her, sharper than the October air. "What do you want, Mr. Hollis?" "Straightforward. I admire that." He stepped closer, crowding her space, his presence deliberate and unsettling. "I want to make you an offer, Miss Vale. A generous one." "I'm not interested. Hear me out." His tone hardened, businesslike. "I know about your past, the whispers back east, the accusations, the towns that turned you away. It must wear on a woman, always wondering when her name will catch up with her." Lorne felt the blood drain from her face. "How do you know that?" "I make it my habit to learn things about people who matter to me," Hollis said softly. "And you, my dear, matter very much." Hollis drew a neatly folded document from inside his coat. "I've got a sworn statement here from a man named Lucian Cross," he said calmly. "Your former fiancé, if I'm not mistaken. In it, he lays out your flexible views on propriety." The word struck like a slap. Lorne recognized the name instantly. Lucian, who had once sworn devotion, then abandoned her the moment his family applied pressure. "It's a lie," she said, her hands trembling despite her effort to steady them. Whatever he claimed. "Truth is a matter of perspective, Miss Vale," Hollis replied smoothly. "What counts is what people choose to believe." His smile cut sharp. He imagined how the respectable folk of Cedar Falls might react to learning their rancher's housekeeper carries such a history. And imagine how Cade would react. "Cade knows my past," Lorne said, lifting her chin. "Does he?" Hollis's voice softened, turning cruel. "Does he know about the hotel room, the so-called misunderstanding, the married man who swore you tempted him?" "I doubt it." He leaned closer. "Men forgive rumors. Documents are another matter." Lorne held herself upright, drawing strength from somewhere deep. "What do you want?" "I want you to persuade Cade to sell me this ranch," Hollis said plainly. "You have influence. Use it. In return, your past stays buried, and you walk away with enough money to begin again, comfortably. And if I refuse?" The civility vanished. "Then I ruin you both. Cade first, by showing him exactly who he's invited into his home. Then you, by ensuring every decent family from here to the border knows your name. You're vile, she said. I'm efficient, Hollis corrected. Cade owns something I intend to have. You're simply leverage. Decide whether you're clever enough to take a fair bargain. Get off this land, Lorne said, her voice shaking with fury. Now. Hollis shrugged, unbothered. You have 1 week. After that, Lucian Cross's very thorough account finds its way into the papers. He swung into the saddle. And Miss Vale, best keep this between us. Men can be unpredictable when they believe they've been misled. When he rode away, Lorne collapsed onto the porch steps, her strength gone. She could still see Lucien's signature in her mind, proof enough to shatter everything she'd built with Cade. She was still there when Cade returned an hour later. He dismounted at once, concern carving his features. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," she said, forcing a smile. "Just worn out. The cold gets into my bones." Cade studied her closely. "You look like you've seen a ghost." In a way, she had. The past rising just as she dared to hope for happiness. But she couldn't tell him, not yet. "I'm fine," she repeated, taking his hand as he helped her up. "I just need warmth and coffee." That evening, as they sat by the fire after supper, Cade seemed unusually thoughtful, staring into the flames as if weighing a storm only he could see. Cade kept casting looks her way, as though words pressed against him that refused to come out. At last he spoke. "Lorne, there's something I want you to see." He went upstairs and returned, carrying a small wooden case, the sort meant for things held dear. He opened it carefully. Inside lay a silver locket, dulled by time but elegant in its simplicity. "This belonged to Merelda," he said softly. "Her mother gave it to her the day we married." He opened the clasp. Inside rested a pressed rose, browned with age, yet unmistakable, from her wedding bouquet. Lorne felt her eyes burn. "Cade, why are you showing me this?" "Because I want you to have it." His voice was steady, but his eyes were not. "Merelda has been gone 4 years. I spent all that time gripping her memory so tightly, I forgot how to breathe. Then you came along. You taught me that loving again doesn't erase the past." He lifted the locket and stepped behind her, fastening it around her neck with careful fingers. "I love you, Lorne Vale. Not because you replaced Merelda, but because you're you. Strong, stubborn, brave enough to take a life no one else would touch." Lorne covered the locket with her hand, its weight resting like a vow against her throat. "I love you too," she whispered. For a moment, Dane Hollis felt like distant thunder, dangerous but far away. Yet after Cade kissed her goodnight and went upstairs, Lorne remained by the dying fire. Fingers curled around the locket, her heart heavy with what she could not yet tell him. She had 6 days to protect the man she loved, or watch everything collapse. The answer found her where she least expected it. Thorne Roran's old desk in the study. She had avoided the room since Hollis's visit, unable to quiet her racing thoughts. But that morning, desperate to keep her hands busy, she tackled the task Cade had delayed for months, sorting his father's papers. Thorne had been meticulous. Receipts from cattle purchases decades old, letters to attorneys in Austin, contracts carefully labeled and stacked. As Lorne worked through a drawer of legal documents, her fingers brushed something hidden, an envelope wedged behind the drawer frame, deliberately concealed. It was addressed to Cade in Thorne's precise handwriting. A note beneath the name read, "To be opened only in the event of a legal challenge to the ranch." The seal was unbroken. The paper yellowed with age. Lorne's pulse thundered. Cade was out riding the herds with Garrick Moss and wouldn't return for hours. Whatever lay inside, Thorne had hidden it for a reason, one tied directly to threats like Hollis's. Hands shaking, Lorne broke the seal. The first document was a letter, dated only months before Thorne's death. "Son, if you're reading this, then someone is trying to take what belongs to us. I should have told you the truth years ago, but pride kept my mouth shut. I believed the past would stay buried. I was wrong. When you were born, your mother was gravely ill. Fearing we might lose her, I made arrangements in desperation. I placed the ranch in trust, not to you, as everyone believes, but to your firstborn son. I believed it would shield the land from creditors if anything happened to me, and I intended to change it back once your mother recovered. Then the war came. You left. I delayed, again and again. By the time Ash was born, I realized that trust might be the strongest protection the ranch could ever have. A child cannot be forced to sell land the way a grown man can be coerced or threatened. The documents are all enclosed. Ash was the rightful owner of Blackbriar Ranch from the day he entered this world until the day he left it. Now that he is gone, the land returns to you, but not in the manner most would expect. You inherit as Ash's father and nearest living heir, which means any sale must be approved by the county court and judged to be in the best interest of the estate. Forgive me for not telling you, son. I thought I was protecting you. I may have only made things more complicated. Use this knowledge wisely." Lorne read the letter twice, her breath shallow. Cade wasn't just the owner of the ranch. He was the legal guardian of his deceased son's estate. Any attempt to force a sale would have to pass through the courts, and judges were fiercely protective when a child's legacy was involved, even one long buried. The rest of the envelope confirmed it all. Trust filings, court records, notarized agreements. Everything Thorne Ruran had described. Even a copy of Ash Ruran's birth certificate bore a handwritten notation about land inheritance. It was airtight, legal, hidden, and completely unknown to Cade. She was still staring at the papers when the thunder of hooves broke her focus. Through the window, she saw Cade riding hard toward the house, jaw set, eyes dark. 3 other riders followed him, men she didn't recognize. Heart hammering, Lorne gathered the documents and rushed outside. Cade was already dismounting, one hand hovering near his gun. "Get inside," he called sharply. "Lock the doors." "What's happening?" "Hollis's men," Cade said grimly. "They were driving the cattle, trying to spook them toward the creek. When Garrick Moss and I rode out, they said they had orders to make sure we understood how serious Hollis is." The 3 riders stopped at the edge of the yard. Close enough to threaten, far enough to avoid immediate bloodshed. Hard men, the kind who lived by force. "Mr. Ruran," one called out. "Mr. Hollis wants to know if you've given his generous offer any more thought." "You can tell Hollis to go straight to hell," Cade replied, his voice calm as winter steel. The man grinned. "That's not very neighborly. Maybe you just need encouragement." Another rider lifted a torch, its flame already licking the air. "Fine barn you've got. Would be a shame if something happened to it." Cade's gun cleared leather in a blink. "You light one building on this ranch," he said evenly, "and I'll drop you before the flame catches." 3 of us, the first man drawled. "One of you. You might get one, maybe 2. Want to find out?" Cade asked. The silence stretched tight as wire. Lorne could see the calculation behind their eyes. Orders weighed against survival. At last, the leader lifted his hand. "We're not here to start a war today. Just delivering a message." He tipped his hat. "Mr. Hollis's patience is thinning. He expects an answer soon." They turned and rode off. Cade stood alone in the yard, gun still drawn, shoulders rigid with restraint. Lorne approached him slowly. "Cade," she said softly. "There's something you need to read," Lorne said quietly. She guided Cade Roran into the study and placed his father's letter in his hands. She stayed close, watching the shift in his expression, the tightening of his jaw, the widening of his eyes, until comprehension finally settled in. The ranch. It was ashes. Cade murmured, awe threading his voice. "All this time, it belonged to my son." "That means Dane Hollis can't force you to sell," Lorne said steadily. "Any sale would have to go through the courts. They'd have to rule it in Ash's best interest, even now." Cade sank into Thorne Roran's old chair, the paper trembling slightly in his grip. "I spent years thinking I lost everything when they died," he said hoarsely. "But Ash, he's still protecting this land. Your father planned for this," Lorne said softly. "He knew someone like Hollis might come." Cade looked up at her, eyes bright with unshed tears. "This changes everything. The threats, the pressure, they don't mean a damn thing anymore." "No," Lorne agreed. "They don't." Even as she said it, a cold unease slid down her spine. Hollis wasn't the kind of man who accepted defeat. And when law failed him, fire often followed. The torch his men had carried hadn't been theater. It was a warning. "We need to get these papers to a lawyer," Cade said, folding the letter with care. "Filed. Recorded. And we tell people in town. The more eyes on this, the harder it'll be for Hollis to move in the dark." He stopped short, gaze fixing over Lorne's shoulder. She turned and saw it instantly, smoke curling up from the direction of the south pasture. "Son of a bitch," Cade snarled, grabbing his hat and heading for the door. They lit the grass. Outside, the danger was unmistakable. October fields lay brittle and dry. A grass fire could race across the ranch in hours. If it reached the buildings or the hay. "Buckets!" Cade shouted, already sprinting toward the barn. "Anything that holds water, I'll get the horses." As Lorne ran for the kitchen, dread sharpened into clarity. This was Hollis's real plan. If he couldn't steal the land on paper, he'd burn it bare, cattle, barns, pasture, then offer to buy the ruins for pennies. The wind rose, shoving the flames toward the heart of the ranch. In the distance, Garrick Moss came hard at a gallop, face smeared black with soot. The fight for Blackbriar had begun, and Hollis had struck first. Yet as Lorne filled bucket after bucket, hauling water until her arms shook, something unexpected took root beneath the fear. Hope. They had the law now. And more than that, they had a reason to stand. Ash's legacy would not be turned to ash, not if she and Cade had breath left to fight. It took 6 brutal hours to stop the fire. By the time the last ember was stamped out, nearly 100 acres of good grazing land lay scorched and smoking. Cade stood at the edge of the burn, soot streaking his face, surveying the damage in silence. "Could have been worse," Garrick said, though his voice rang hollow. "Could have taken the whole place." "This isn't over," Cade Roran said at last. "Dane Hollis is only getting started." From where she sat on a fallen log, Lorne Vale watched him in silence, too worn out to stand. Her dress was scorched and stained, her palms raw with blisters from hauling water. Yet a fierce sense of victory steadied her breath. They had saved the house. They had saved the cattle. The rest, the pasture, the fences, could be mended. Grass would grow again. "We need help," she said quietly. "We can't stand against Hollis alone." Cade's jaws set. "I'm not asking other folks to bleed for my troubles." "It isn't just yours anymore." Garrick Moss cut in. "If Hollis gets his boot on this ranch, he'll move on every small outfit in the county. People know it, even if they're scared to say so." "And you might not have to ask," Lorne added. As if her words had called them up, the sound of hard-ridden horses carried across the yard. A line of riders approached along the main road, not the Hollis cutters this time, but local men. Lorne recognized a few from town. Their leader, a weathered rancher with iron-gray hair, swung down from the saddle and approached Cade with the careful respect of one landman greeting another. "Cade," he said, offering his hand. "Name's Eldon Price. I run cattle 10 miles north." Cade shook his hand, guarded. "What brings you out here?" "Saw the smoke from my place," Eldon replied. "Heard about your trouble. Looks like you kept it from turning worse." "For now," Cade said, "but Hollis won't stop." "No," Eldon agreed grimly. "That's why we came. Hollis has been sniffing around my land too, asking about water rights, land values. He's got plans, and none of them leave room for folks like us." Another man stepped forward, younger, with sunburned skin and honest eyes. "Holt Wicker," he said. "I run cattle east along the creek. Hollis made me an offer last week. Told me if I didn't take it, I wouldn't get another chance." "How many of you has he leaned on?" Cade asked. "Most anyone sitting on decent ground," Eldon answered. "He's patient, smiles easy at first. But there's something in him, something cold." Cade went still, weighing the moment. Then he said, "There's something you all need to hear. It changes things." He told them about the trust, about Ash Rioran, about how the land had legally belonged to his son and what that meant now, as he spoke. Lorne watched understanding spread through the men like dawn breaking. "So he can't just scare you into selling," Holt said, excitement creeping into his voice. "He has to go through the courts." "That's right," Cade said. "Legally, his threats don't amount to a damn thing." "But he doesn't know that yet," Eldon noted. Cade's smile cut sharp. "No, he doesn't." "Then that's our edge," someone muttered. "Question is, how do we use it?" They talked for over an hour, trading stories and pieces of hard-earned knowledge about Hollis's movements across the county. What emerged was worse than any one of them had guessed. Hollis wasn't just buying land, he was clearing it, breaking resistance with money, pressure, and fear. And now, standing together in the burned pasture, they finally saw him for what he was. "He's got backing," Eldon Price said grimly. "More money than any of us can touch. And those men of his, the Hollis cutters, they aren't hired hands. They're professionals. All the more reason we stand together," Cade Roran replied. "He can't bully all of us at once." But even as the words left his mouth, Lorne Vale saw the concern in his eyes. These were good men, honest men. Ranchers and farmers, not gunfighters. If Dane Hollis chose to push past legal pressure and money, things could turn ugly fast. After the men rode off, promising to stay close and watch one another's backs, Cade and Lorne walked toward the house under a darkening sky. The sharp scent of burned grass still clung to the air, a reminder of how quickly everything could be lost. "There's something else we need to talk about," Cade said as they stepped onto the porch. "Hollis won't stop at land and cattle. When he realizes the law won't bend, he'll make it personal." Lauren's stomach tightened, the memory of folded papers and whispered threats flooding back. "What do you mean?" "I mean he'll hunt for weaknesses," Cade said quietly. "People we love, secrets, anything he can twist against us." He turned to face her fully. "Lauren, if there's anything in your past that can be used as a weapon, I need to know. Now." The moment she'd been dreading finally arrived. She looked into his steady gray eyes and felt something ache deep in her chest. "Whatever it is," Cade added, "we face it together. But I need the truth." She drew a long breath and told him everything. About Lucian Cross, his family's objections, the false accusations, the rumors that chased her from town to town. About Hollis coming to the ranch, about the threats he'd made if she didn't turn Cade against his own land. Cade didn't interrupt once. His expression hardened with every word. When she finished, silence stretched between them. "Those accusations," he said at last, "are they true?" "No," Lauren answered steadily. "But what Hollis claims to have could look real enough to ruin me. And you, just for standing beside me." Cade's hands curled into fists. "That bastard came here while I was gone. Threatened you in your own house." "Our house," Lauren corrected softly. "And Wade, Cade? I never slept with anyone before you. None of it was true. It was a lie his family used to throw me away, without staining their own name." "I believe you," Cade said without hesitation. "But Hollis is right about one thing. Truth doesn't always matter when folks want to believe the worst. So, what do we do?" He went quiet, thinking. Then something sparked in his eyes. "We tell the truth first," he said. "All of it." Lauren frowned. "You mean before Hollis poisons the town?" Cade continued. "People in Cedar Falls have seen you work. They know the woman you are. If they hear your story from us, clean, honest, and whole, his lies won't hit nearly as hard." A fragile hope stirred in her chest. "You really think that would work?" "I think it's our best chance." He paused, then drew a breath as if steadying himself. "And I think it's time I stopped half living." Her heart skipped. "Cade." He dropped to one knee right there on the porch, taking her hands in his roughened palms. "Lauren Vale," he said, voice thick with feeling. "You came here to do a job nobody wanted and gave me back my life. You're strong, stubborn, brave as hell, and I love you more than I ever thought I could love anyone. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision, but his certainty shone clear as daylight. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. Of course, yes." Cade rose and kissed her then, slow, sure, and full of promise, as the burned land around them faded into the dark, and the fight ahead took on a new meaning. For a brief heartbeat, the rest of the world disappeared. Dane Hollis's threats, the blackened pasture, the danger gathering just beyond the horizon. None of it existed in that instant. There was only this: two people who had found one another against every cruel turn of fate, standing together on the edge of whatever came next. And yet, even as they held each other, both of them understood the truth. The hardest battle was still waiting. Hollis would never surrender quietly, and once he learned about the trust documents shielding the ranch, he would turn truly vicious. In a room at the Cedar Falls Hotel, Dane Hollis sat alone at a polished desk, writing with deliberate care in a leather-bound journal. The grass fire, he decided, had merely been a warning. Nothing more. If Cade Ruran believed a little scorched land marked the end of it, he was a fool. Hollis had not spent years maneuvering, investing money and influence, only to be stopped by sentiment or stubborn pride. Cade possessed something Hollis intended to own, something he had been positioning himself to claim for a very long time. And the fact that Cade had begun to heal, had found love again, only promised a sweeter triumph in the end. Tomorrow, Hollis would begin the real campaign, and when it was finished, Cade Ruran would learn a lesson Hollis knew well. Some wounds never truly close. They simply wait for the right moment to be torn open again. Hollis smiled as he shut the journal. The game was about to become far more interesting. The attack came at midnight, under a moonless November sky. Lorne Vale woke to the sharp bite of smoke in her lungs and the sound of horses screaming in terror. An orange glow pulsed beyond the bedroom window, as if the night itself were burning. "Cade," she cried, shaking him hard. "The barn's on fire." Cade was on his feet before sleep fully released him, pulling on trousers and boots with practiced speed. "Get dressed," he ordered. "Stay low, and no matter what you hear, don't leave this house unless I tell you to." "I'm not hiding, Wal." His voice cut sharp and absolute. "This isn't just a fire. This is an attack." Understanding hit her like ice. "Hollis is making his move," Cade continued. "I need to know you're safe." Through the window, they saw Garrick Moss running toward the barn with buckets, his small frame swallowed by towering flames. The horses were loose in the corral, panicked and crashing into one another as sparks rained down around them. Cade snatched his rifle from the cabinet and checked the load. "If anyone comes to this house, anyone you don't recognize, you know where the shotgun is." Before Lorne could answer, he was gone, sprinting straight toward the roaring fire, the weight of fear heavy in her chest. The barn was already lost. Dry timber and stacked hay had turned it into a raging inferno that could likely be seen clear across the county. But the horses, there was still a chance to save the horses. Cade was already in the corral, moving with steady precision despite the chaos. He caught the lead mare, Rosie, and began guiding the rest toward the far pasture. Garrick stayed close behind him, his soot-streaked face set with grim resolve. That was when Lorne saw the riders. 6 men advanced from the direction of town, faces hidden behind bandanas, spreading out with practiced intent as they closed in on the ranch house. The meaning was unmistakable. Hollis had chosen his moment perfectly. With Cade and Garrick fighting the fire, the house was nearly defenseless. The front door shattered inward just as Lorne Vale lifted the shotgun. The first man through the doorway took the blast square in the chest and collapsed without a sound. The second dove hard to the side, dragging his weapon up as splintered wood rained down around him. "Drop it," he snarled, "or we'll burn this place to the ground with you in it." Lorne racked another shell, the click loud in the smoke-filled room. "Looks like you already tried that." The standoff lasted only a heartbeat before Cade Ruran's voice sliced through the night, sharp and commanding. "You're trespassing on private land." The remaining men spun to see Cade and Garrick Moss stepping out of the firelight, rifles raised, barrels steady. With the flames roaring behind him, Cade looked carved from iron, jaw tight, eyes reflecting orange and gold. "Dane Hollis sent you," Cade said. It wasn't a question. One of the men, either braver or dumber than the rest, answered. Mr. Hollis just wants what's fair. You sell him the ranch, nobody else gets hurt. Nobody else? Cade's tone went cold. What about my barn, my hay, the horses you nearly burned alive? That was persuasion, the man shot back. This here is the real offer. You've got till dawn. Sell to Mr. Hollis or watch everything you care about turn to ash. Cade took a single step forward, rifle unwavering. Here's my answer. You leave my land right now, and I don't put you in the ground. 3 of us, 2 of you, another man scoffed. Those odds ain't great. You're forgetting me, Lorne said from the doorway, the shotgun steady in her grip. And you're forgetting this is our home. We'll defend it. The leader of the Hollis cutters glanced around, nerves finally showing. What had started as a simple intimidation had twisted into something far more dangerous. Behind them, the barn continued to burn, but the horses were safe and the house stood untouched. This ain't over, he said at last, motioning the others back. Hollis has lawyers. Money, power, he'll find a way. Cade didn't lower his rifle. Tell Hollis something for me. Tell him Ash Ruran's father doesn't bargain with arsonists or killers. This ranch belongs to my son's memory, and I'll die before I give it up. The men mounted and rode off into the dark. Cade and Garrick worked until dawn, stamping out embers and cutting fire breaks to keep the flames from spreading. By morning, the barn was nothing but a smoking skeleton. But the house still stood, the livestock were alive, and everyone had survived. Inside the kitchen, Lorne moved on instinct alone, setting coffee to brew while her hands trembled from exhaustion and the weight of what she'd done. She had taken a life. The truth of it pressed down on her chest. Cade found her there as the sun crept over the horizon, staring out at the wreckage. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned into his strength. You saved us, he said softly. I couldn't let them hurt you, she whispered. I couldn't let them take this from us. Cade turned her gently, searching her face in the pale morning light. Are you all right? After everything? I am, she said, surprising herself with how true it felt. I did what I had to do. For our home. For our future. Outside, smoke still drifted from the barn's remains. But they could also see Garrick leading the horses back, hear cattle lowing across the fields, feel the solid timbers of the house beneath their feet. Hollis had shown his hand, had proven he would burn and kill to get what he wanted. But he'd made one fatal mistake. He had underestimated the people standing in his way. The war for Blackbriar Ranch was far from finished, but the first real victory had been claimed. As Cade Ruran held Lorne Vale close in the pale morning light, she understood one simple truth. Whatever came next, they would meet it side by side. 3 days later, the reckoning arrived not at the ranch, but in the very center of Cedar Falls. Cade insisted they ride into town together, determined to file the trust documents with the county clerk and announce their engagement in public view. If Dane Hollis wants a fight, Cade had said, he'll have it in daylight, with witnesses. They were stepping out of the courthouse when Hollis appeared, flanked by 2 sharply dressed men whose stiff posture and leather briefcases marked them as lawyers. His face was locked into careful restraint, but the fury in his eyes burned when he saw Cade's arm wrapped firmly around Lorne's waist. Ruran, Hollis said coolly, I hear congratulations are in order. News travels fast, Cade replied, his tone even. So it does. I also hear you've been circulating some rather creative ideas about land ownership and legal protections. Hollis's smile cut like broken glass. Imagine my surprise when I learned about your father's trust. Not creative at all, Cade said, just lawful. And it makes your offers meaningless. For a moment, Hollis's control slipped. You think a piece of paper protects you? You think hiding behind a dead child's rights makes you untouchable? Lorne felt Cade stiffen, but his voice stayed level. My son's memory is worth more than your money or your threats. Your son? Hollis laughed, sharp and cruel. Tell me, Cade, did you ever wonder if the boy was actually yours? The air seemed to drain from the courthouse steps. Conversations died mid-sentence as townsfolk turned to stare. What did you say? Cade asked, his voice low and lethal. Hollis leaned in, ensuring the crowd could hear. Mirelda Ruran was alone often. A beautiful woman, abandoned for months while her husband chased cattle. Did you truly believe she spent every night alone? Cade's hand drifted toward his gun. Lorne caught his wrist, gripping hard. She felt the violence coiled inside him, waiting. Don't, she whispered. That's what he wants. Hollis heard her and smiled. Smart woman, for a housekeeper. He drew out a folded paper. I have a sworn statement from Dr. Benjamin Hayes, the physician who attended Mirelda during her pregnancy. Fascinating reading. Your boy was born nearly a month early. Cade's face went pale. You're lying. Am I? Hollis replied smoothly. The doctor was quite precise. Dates, emotional distress. Guilt does weigh heavily on a woman carrying another man's child. That's enough. The voice cut cleanly through the tension. Bess Calderon stepped forward, planting herself beside Cade and Lorne. I've heard enough of your filth, Mr. Hollis. Behind her came Eldon Price, Holt Wicker, and several other ranchers, their presence deliberate and unmissable. They had not come to watch. They had come to stand. Hollis looked around, finally registering the shift. He had money, lawyers, and hired guns. But Cade had something stronger. A town that was no longer willing to stay silent. Hollis's gaze swept across the men gathered in the street, measuring numbers, weighing consequences. This isn't finished, Roran, he said coldly. Documents can be contested, trusts can be unraveled, and reputations, his eyes slid to Lorne Vale, can be ruined with the right proof. You want to test that? Cade Ruran stepped forward, his hand resting in plain sight on his gun. You want to smear my wife's name, poison my family, torch my land. Go on. But hear this first. I'm not the hollow man you thought you were cornering. I've got something worth standing for now. Something worth defending. His voice hardened. And I won't let a viper like you take it. For a long heartbeat, the two men faced one another in the dust. Lorne could feel the weight of everything that stood between them. The war, the betrayals, the years of bitterness that had led to this standoff. Then Cade reached into his coat and pulled out a worn photograph. Hollis's eyes widened. The picture showed two young soldiers, Cade in uniform beside a younger Hollis, both smiling. You know the cruelest part, Dane? Cade said quietly. I carried you out of enemy territory because I thought you were worth saving, because I believed there was something decent left in you. He tore the photograph cleanly in half and let the pieces drift to the ground. I was wrong, and I won't make that mistake again. Cade turned away, took Lorne's arm, and guided her toward their wagon. The crowd opened before them, and she saw something new in the faces watching. Respect. Respect for a man who had faced his past and chosen love instead of vengeance. Yet, as the wagon rolled out of town, Lorne glanced back. Hollis still stood in the street, his expression twisted with fury, and something dangerously close to desperation. That day had been won. But the war, she knew, was not entirely finished. 6 months later, Lorne stood in the doorway of the rebuilt barn, watching Cade secure the final board of a freshly carved sign. The pine was new, the lettering precise and bold. Blackbriar Ranch, Cade and Lorne Ruran. It was their wedding day. The barn had been transformed. Late spring wildflowers woven along the beams, ribbons fluttering just as Bess Calderon insisted they must for a proper celebration. Nearly half the county filled the space, laughter and music echoing where grief had once lived. Cade stepped back, wiped his hands, and smiled at his bride. Lorne wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully refitted, with Merelda Roran's silver locket resting at her throat. It felt right, honoring what had been while claiming what was to come. "It's perfect," she said, rising to kiss him. "We're perfect," Cade corrected, and for the first time since she'd known him, there was no shadow in his eyes, no grief, no guilt, only love. The ceremony was simple. The circuit preacher spoke. Garrick Moss stood proudly as best man, and Bess served as matron of honor. When Cade slid the plain gold band, one he'd forged himself, onto Lorne's finger, she felt the final weight of her past fall away. She was no longer Lorne Vale, the woman whispered about. The woman without a place. She was Lorne Roran, partner in a ranch, wife to a good man, and part of a community that judged her not by rumors, but by the life she chose to build. The celebration stretched long into the night. Eldon Price played the fiddle. The women of Cedar Falls laid out enough food for an army, and the barn rang with joy. For the first time in years, Blackbriar Ranch was not just standing, it was alive again. Children darted between the long tables, their laughter weaving through the low murmur of grown-up talk and the distant, steady lowing of cattle beyond the barn. As the sun sank behind the Texas hills, washing the sky in soft gold and rose, Cade Ruran found Lorne Vale sitting on the porch steps, quietly watching the celebration unfold. "No regrets?" he asked, lowering himself beside her. "About what?" she said with a smile. "Marrying you, taking the job nobody wanted, standing up to arsonists and gunmen." She shook her head. "Not a single one." Cade was silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "I went to see Ash's grave this morning, before the ceremony." Lorne turned toward him. There was no old ache in his face now, only calm. "How did that feel?" "Right," he said. "I told him about you, about today, about how you brought life back to this place." His voice grew thoughtful. "I think he would have liked you. Merelda, too." "I hope so," Lorne replied gently. "I've been taking care of their family, after all." "Our family," Cade corrected, threading his fingers through hers. "And there's something I need to say. Something I should have said months ago." She waited, sensing the weight behind his words. "When Dane Hollis said those things about Ash, about whether he was really my son, it didn't matter. Even if it had been true, which I don't believe for a second, it wouldn't change anything. Ash was my boy from the moment I held him. Merelda was my wife, no matter what lies anyone wanted to spread." "Cade, let me finish." He squeezed her hand. "Family isn't blood alone. It's choice. It's commitment. It's showing up every day and deciding to love someone for who they are." He lifted her knuckles and kissed them. "You chose this place. You chose me. You chose us. That makes you family in the truest way there is. Tears gathered in her eyes. You're going to make me cry on my wedding day. Happy tears, he said with a small smile. The happiest. They sat together, watching the last color fade from the sky as the first stars came out. Inside the barn, someone struck up a slow waltz, and couples began to drift onto the cleared floor. Mrs. Roran. Cade said formally, rising and offering his hand. May I have this dance? I was wondering when you'd ask, Mr. Roran. Lantern light glowed across the barn as they joined the others, moving in easy circles. Cade led with quiet confidence. You dance well, Lorne said. Where'd you learn? Merelda taught me, he replied. She said a man ought to know how to escort his wife properly. His smile was warm, touched with memory but free of sorrow. She cared about things like that. I like that she taught you, Lorne said softly. I like that she's still part of us. She always will be, Cade agreed. She and Ash, they're part of this land, part of its heart. As the music carried them, Lorne thought of the road that had led her here. The scandal that chased her from her old life. The desperate choice to take a position no one else would touch. The slow healing of two wounded souls finding strength together. Hollis had vanished from the county not long after the showdown in town. His threats came to nothing once his hired guns drifted off to easier targets. The surrounding ranchers had closed ranks, forming a quiet pact that no one would stand alone again. And Blackbriar Ranch became something more than land and fences. It became proof that people could change, that they could heal, that something strong and beautiful could rise from loss and ruin. As Cade spun her gently across the floor, Lorne caught sight of the new sign through the open barn doors, its painted letters bold against fresh wood. Tomorrow they would wake as husband and wife. Tomorrow they would begin the work of building a shared life, filling the old house with new memories. She had taken the job nobody wanted, and in doing so, found everything she never knew she was missing. A home, a purpose, and a love steady enough to endure any storm. The music played on, and Lorne Roran danced beneath the Texas stars with her husband, surrounded by friends, grounded in the quiet certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Your presence means more than you know. If today's story awakened something inside you, don't let the trail end here. There are many more tales of courage, devotion, and faith waiting to be discovered. Subscribe, comment, share, and come back as we continue this unforgettable journey. Thank you, truly. Aviso legal. Disclaimer: all stories are intended solely for entertainment and may include fictionalized scenarios or dramatization derived from historical contexts. While AI assists in production, human creators supervise and adjust every piece to maintain sincerity, credibility, and emotional quality. We adhere entirely to platform regulations regarding AI content, ensuring no deep fakes or misleading portrayals. Licensed materials are used responsibly. Republishing, modifying, or extracting content without authorization is not allowed. We appreciate every viewer who respects originality and creative effort.